I never thought moving into a new apartment would be the worst mistake of my life. At the time, it felt like a blessing. I'd been scraping by for years, living paycheck to paycheck, bouncing between crappy rentals with leaky ceilings and cockroach roommates. So when I found a 2-bedroom apartment downtown for half the price of what it should have been, I didn't hesitate. The ad online barely had any photos, just a quick description. Spacious unit, available immediately. Serious renters only. When I called, the landlord's voice was clipped and impatient, like he was in a rush to get rid of it. No application, no references. He just asked if I could move in by the weekend. I should have known something was off. The first day I walked in, the air felt heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm, when you can almost taste the electricity. The place looked fine on the surface. Freshly painted walls, new carpets, working appliances. But something didn't sit right. That night, the first signs showed themselves. The air carried a faint, rotten smell, like sulfur or burnt matches. I opened all the windows, but the stink never really left. It just drifted from room to room. The lights flickered constantly, not like bad wiring, but as if something was playing with the switches. Sometimes the bulbs dimmed so low that shadows stretched across the walls in unnatural shapes. And then there were the cold spots. I'd walk through the living room and suddenly my breath would fog, like I'd stepped into a freezer, but only for a second. Then the air would go back to normal. I told myself it was an old building, nothing more. Until I met the neighbor. She was an older woman who lived across the hall, the type who always seemed to be lurking near the mailboxes. The first time I introduced myself, she grabbed my wrist before I could pull away. Her grip was stronger than I expected, and her eyes were wide, frantic. "You're in 3B, aren't you?" she whispered. I nodded. She shook her head, muttering under her breath. "You shouldn't be there. No one lasts in that apartment, not since him." I asked who she meant, but she wouldn't answer. She just made the sign of the cross and hurried back into her unit, slamming the door shut behind her. I laughed it off at first, but that night I had my first dream. I was standing in my living room, but everything was on fire. The walls burned, the ceiling cracked and fell in flaming chunks. Shadows danced in the corners, long and twisted, like bodies writhing in pain. And in the center of the room stood a figure, tall, charred. Its skin blackened and split like it had been pulled from a fire. It didn't move, didn't speak. It just stared at me with burning red eyes. When I woke up, my room was ice cold. My body was drenched in sweat and the smell of sulfur was stronger than ever. I told myself it was just stress, just a dream. But deep down, I already knew. I wasn't alone in that apartment. By the second week, I couldn't convince myself it was just my imagination anymore. Things were happening that had no explanation, things I couldn't ignore. It started small. I'd set something down, only to find it across the room later. My keys vanished from the counter, then turned up neatly balanced on the bathroom sink. Cups slid a few inches when I wasn't looking. The remote control landed on the floor even though I was the only one in the apartment. At first, I blamed myself. Stress, distraction, forgetfulness. But then the electronics started to fail. My laptop froze every time I tried to open a browser. The screen glitched, flashing images of fire before shutting off completely. My phone drained from 80% to 0 in seconds whenever I stepped into the bedroom. The TV turned itself on in the middle of the night, playing nothing but static, the sound buzzing like a swarm of flies. And then the noises started. Late at night, when everything was quiet, I'd hear it. Whispers. Too faint to make out, but close. Always close. Sometimes behind the walls, sometimes right at my ear. The voices weren't alone either. Footsteps echoed down the hall, slow and deliberate, even though I knew no one else was there. One night, I woke to the sound of scratching. Not the casual skittering of mice, but deliberate, violent claw marks tearing at the plaster inside the walls. It circled my bed, moving inch by inch like something crawling just out of sight. That was when I stopped sleeping with the lights off. But lights didn't help me on the night I saw him for the first time, when he really revealed himself. It was exactly 3 a.m. I woke up suddenly, no reason, no sound. Just awake, like something had pulled me out of sleep. The room was cold enough that I could see my breath drifting in front of me. And then I felt it. The weight. Like the air itself had thickened, pressing down on my chest. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. I turned my head toward the corner of the room, and that's when I saw him, the burned figure. He didn't move. He just stood there, hunched slightly, his blackened skin split like charcoal, glowing embers flickering in the cracks. His eyes burned brighter than fire, 2 pinpoints of red that locked onto mine. I tried to scream, but my throat locked up. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was stare. And then, he spoke. Not with his mouth. His lips never moved. The voice was inside me, crawling into my skull, branding itself onto my brain. You've been chosen. The words were sharp and final, not a suggestion, an absolute truth. I snapped out of it, gasping, and the figure was gone. The corner was empty. The air warmed. My chest loosened. But I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I couldn't. Because deep down I knew he was telling the truth. I had been chosen. I just didn't know for what. Effortlessly. The life I had always dreamed of, all in vivid, burning clarity. And then the cost. All I ask is your loyalty, sign your name, accept me as yours. 1 word, and it is done. I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. No, I whispered. I don't belong to you. The apartment rumbled like it was laughing. Shadows stretched across the walls, twisting toward me like claws. The sulfur smell burned my nose. I felt myself weaken, every nerve in my body trembling. My vision blurred, my thoughts scattered. He pressed harder. You resist, but you cannot last. You are mine already, whether you accept it or not. You will break before the night is done. I wanted to fight. I wanted to run. But I couldn't. I was too weak. And the longer I stayed, the more the apartment itself seemed to feed on my fear, my desperation, my hesitation. Then, before he vanished, I saw it. A leather-bound book lying open on the table. I hadn't touched it, yet the words seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Sign, and it will all end. I wanted to burn it. I wanted to destroy it. But deep down, I knew that whatever power this figure held, nothing I did would stop it from returning. And for the first time, I realized I didn't just feel trapped physically. I was trapped mentally, spiritually. The choice wasn't whether to obey him. It was whether to survive his torment long enough to even resist. I didn't know how long I could hold on. I don't know how long I've been here. Days, weeks, maybe months. Time doesn't exist in this place anymore. The apartment has changed. It's no longer just a building. It feels alive. Watching me, waiting, punishing me. The scratches started first. Thin lines across my arms, then deep gashes along my shoulders. Bruises bloomed across my chest and legs overnight, like invisible hands were squeezing the life out of me while I slept. Sometimes I'd wake with a burning pain in my back as if someone had dragged me across the floor. And the visions. God, the visions. They began subtly at first. Flashes of faces from my past, moments I'd tried to forget. Every lie I'd told, every person I'd hurt, every opportunity I'd squandered. The images started innocuous, but soon they became more vivid. I could feel the guilt as if it were crawling over my skin. I could hear their voices, screaming, begging, cursing. And then came the nightmares within the nightmares. I'd wake up and the shadows from my dreams would still be in the room, reaching toward me, whispering, "You belong to him. You've always belonged." The neighbor who had warned me, the old woman from across the hall, I found out the next day, or maybe it was yesterday. I can't keep track anymore. They found her dead. No signs of forced entry. No marks on her body. at least none that the police could explain. But I knew. I knew who or what had done it. And then I started researching the apartment's history. What I found chilled me to the bone. The building had a long record of missing tenants. In the 1970s, entire floors had been abandoned after strange deaths. Some tenants disappeared overnight. Others went mad, writing frantic letters about shadows and whispers and being chosen. Even older records spoke of devil cults using the building as a site for rituals, summoning, sacrifices, offerings of human lives. The very walls seemed soaked with those horrors. Every brick, every beam seemed to hum with the echo of pain and blood. And now, the devil, or whatever he truly is, was pushing harder. His whispers were constant. Not just at 3 a.m. anymore, but all day. Sign. Join me. Accept what I offer. It will be easier than this suffering. I tried to fight him. Tried to hide. Tried to ignore the book that kept appearing on the table. Every time I avoided it, it returned. Every time I resisted, the scratches grew longer, the bruises darker, and the visions more vivid. I was breaking, and I knew he could feel it. I could almost hear him smirking in my mind. You weaken, you will bend, you cannot survive me forever. I didn't know how much longer I could hold on, but one thing was clear. This apartment was alive with his power, and it wasn't going to let me go without taking my soul. I don't know if anyone will ever read this. If you are, maybe it's too late for me, maybe it's already happened. It's 3:33 a.m. again, always 3:33 a.m., the hour he chooses. I can feel him in the air before I see him, thick, heavy, sulfur-laced, pressing down on my chest. Shadows crawl along the walls like living things twisting and writhing. The apartment is no longer a home. It's a cage, a stage, and I am the unwilling performer. And then he appears. Not in the corner this time, not half seen. He steps fully into the room, charred, towering, blackened skin cracking and glowing faintly from within. Horns curve upward from his skull. His eyes burn red, endless, consuming. The time has come, I hear in my head. Sign, or suffer until you beg for me. I grab the book, the pen. My hands shake so violently I can barely hold them. Every instinct in me screams to refuse. Every part of me whispers to submit and end the pain, the visions, the whispers, the bruises, the scratches. I don't know how long I hesitate. Seconds, minutes, hours, it all blurs. The shadows press closer. My breath comes in shallow gasps. My chest feels like it's being crushed by invisible hands. One word, he whispers inside my mind. That's all it takes. I think of freedom, the life I could have, the power, the wealth. It flashes before my eyes like fire. I think of escape, of relief. And I think of the neighbor, the woman who warned me. Her dead eyes, her whispered warning. I hesitate. My hand moves. Not fully of my own will, but mine enough to tremble over the page. The pen hovers above the leather-bound paper. I can't decide. I don't know if I want to. The apartment quakes, shadows stretch, twisting into claws, writhing faces, mouths opening, screaming. My body trembles like it will shatter. And then silence. I try to speak, but my voice fails me. The pen moves. Words form. I don't know if it's me or him. And then, the post appears. Reddit. My account. My confession, typed out. Word for word, everything you've read so far. But it ends mid-sentence. And I thought I could resist, but the shadows whispered my name and I... Nothing more. The screen goes black. I don't know if I'm still me. I don't know if anyone is reading this. I only know one thing. He is.